Tonight on Reporting Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon says there should be no room for complacency over sexual harassment claims at Holyrood. We'll hear from the First Minister, who's called for cross-party talks on the matter, also on the programme. Combating fake news about cancer. How one leading charity has employed a full-time nurse to make sure the right information reaches patients.
There's a lot of false information out there, so I was very conscious. I only used the Macmillan site and the NHS site because I knew that information would be accurate.
And later in the programme, a row over claims that Westminster welfare reforms could leave thousands of people with disabilities worse off. Scotland interim football manager Malky Mackay talks about the squad he's named for next week's friendly against the Netherlands.
As Jackie Stewart opened up his lead to take the checkered flag in his Matra Ford, a lap ahead of the rest.
And we hear from Sir Jackie Stewart after Lewis Hamilton surpasses him to become Britain's most decorated Formula One driver. Good evening. The First Minister says the Scottish Parliament must not be complacent about how it deals with sexual harassment allegations. In a letter to Holyrood's presiding officer, Nicola Sturgeon suggests a cross-party meeting to review current arrangements. Her intervention came as the UK government announced an investigation had begun into allegations of serious misconduct at Westminster. Stephen Godden reports.
Andrea Leadsom.
MPs gather at Westminster this afternoon to acknowledge and confront a problem seemingly unrestricted by political boundaries. Holyrood is also now at the centre of allegations of sexual harassment, a long-standing problem only now being talked about, according to the lawyer voicing the concerns of a number of women.
It's a catalogue of allegations which stem from cyber stalking to online harassment, to sexually explicit emails, to requests for sex, to actual physical assault, to bullying and harassment.
In Dundee this afternoon, the First Minister revealed she'd written to the presiding officer asking for a review of the procedures used to tackle the behaviour at the centre of these allegations.
We shouldn't assume that Holyrood or any other institution or organisation is immune from this. I think that would be complacent and the wrong thing to do. So I think it's incumbent on every business, institution, organisation right now to take a critical look at its own procedures to make sure that there are processes in place that women would feel confident about using should they find themselves with concerns.
Over the last 5 years, the authorities here at the Scottish Parliament say that the number of cases of harassment or other inappropriate behaviour brought to their attention is in single figures, and that not all of those cases involved MSPs. The question they're asking themselves is, do those figures represent the true scale of the problem? With the aim of reassuring everyone working at Holyrood, a dedicated phone line is being set up where concerns can be raised confidentially. Tomorrow, the presiding officer will hold an urgent meeting of all party leaders. And, in an effort to understand the true scale of the problem, an anonymous survey will be carried out. Change, says this former party leader, is vital, but by no means certain.
You've got to ask yourself, why aren't we hearing these names? Why aren't women coming forward? And that's about the culture that permeates politics, not just here in Edinburgh, but across the whole of the United Kingdom. And women are scared to raise their hand. They're scared about being labelled trouble, they're scared of not being believed, and they're scared of no action being taken.
At Westminster and at Holyrood, the conduct of those publicly elected under severe public scrutiny. Stephen Godden, Reporting Scotland.
Well, I'm joined now from Holyrood by our political correspondent Glenn Campbell and from Westminster by Nick Eardley. First to Glenn. Glenn, we've heard what the First Minister has had to say. What happens next?
Well, Holyrood wasn't sitting today, but you can be sure sexual harassment will be a major topic of discussion when MSPs return tomorrow. Not only is the presiding officer sitting down with party leaders in the afternoon to review the current processes and procedures that not only the Parliament but political parties have in place, we know that this will be raised in the Holyrood Chamber as well, with one MSP asking what action the government is taking to tackle this problem. Now, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, as you've been reporting, has written to the Holyrood authorities saying that there can be no complacency. And whilst Holyrood believes it has a robust procedure in place to deal with allegations of sexual harassment, and they've stressed that there have been a very small number, very low number of reported cases in the history of the Parliament, they acknowledge that that may not reveal the true extent of the problem, and that's why they're now setting up this confidential helpline and looking at taking other measures, including carrying out an anonymised survey to make it easier for those who've experienced harassment and those who may be worried about others to come forward and share their experiences.
And Nick, at Westminster, we've heard calls for zero tolerance to harassment. What's been reaction there to all of this?
Well, Jackie, this isn't the first time we've heard about allegations of sexual harassment at Westminster, but what the parties have done today is firstly to say they all dedicate themselves to that zero tolerance approach, and secondly to say that more independent support should be on offer for victims, ironing out some of the issues that have been discussed in recent days, like the fact that MPs are often the employers of people who potentially might want to make complaints against them. A word that was mentioned a few times in that emergency debate this afternoon was watershed. There are people over the road who hope that recent high-profile allegations like the ones we've seen in the United States against Harvey Weinstein will lead to people here taking the issue far more seriously. There will be talks between parties in the coming days. Parliament's authorities are meeting tonight. But we also heard in that debate today claims about allegations not being taken seriously at Westminster. So I think many will look to see what concrete proposals the government and parties come up with in the coming days.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks also to Glenn Campbell at Holyrood. A charity is to combat fake news about cancer on the internet by appointing a full-time nurse to provide accurate information. Macmillan says unverified sites are causing unnecessary worry. It's created the Post, based in Glasgow, to provide information about cancer through social media. Katie Hunter can tell us more.
Can I ask, when was the last time you visited your doctor?
Staff at this cancer support centre in Glasgow say the number of phone calls they're receiving has plateaued, while the number of online queries is rising. But Macmillan says patients turning to unverified websites could be needlessly frightened. There are claims about chemotherapy causing cancer and baking soda healing breast cancer. So that's why Macmillan has hired its first digital nurse, solely dedicated to steering patients away from sites which make false claims.
And there is one that does say that if you do a search that actually sodium bicarbonate can cure breast cancer. That is one of the things that is out there. And it's about just kind of, as an organisation, Macmillan are saying, you know, we can't stop people going onto the internet, and we don't want to do that because there's really good, reliable information and trustworthy sources there. But what we're trying to say is that be mindful and be aware that some sites are not trustworthy and they're not reliable.
Kay Robertson turned to the internet when she was first diagnosed with liver cancer in 2014. She says a dedicated online nurse makes sense.
When you're in the consultant's room, you're very conscious of it's quite a lot of information to take on, even if you've got someone with you, because it's quite a shock for them if it's your family member. So perhaps you can just take your time, read the answers to the question and then possibly pose another one or just digest that information.
Research for Macmillan found more than a third of Scottish cancer patients looked up information about their diagnosis online. Of those, 1 in 10 said they turned to the internet because they didn't fully understand what they'd been told by medical staff. The charity says 4% of people thought they were going to die after sourcing information online.
There's a lot of sites out there that have got a lot of fake stuff, and when you get a cancer diagnosis, quite often you don't remember a lot about it. So people after getting their diagnosis go online and sometimes find information that's really very inaccurate and quite scary.
Macmillan hopes Ellen's role will mean fewer patients in future relying on false information. Katie Hunter, reporting Scotland.
An ambulance technician told a murder trial he thought it was odd a toddler was lying alone when he and a colleague responded to a 999 call. Alan Walker was giving evidence at the trial of Sadia Ahmed, who denies murdering her 14-month-old daughter Anaya last April. He told the High Court he was surprised no one was tending to the child, who was alone in a double bed at the house in Glasgow. The trial continues. MSPs are backing plans for unannounced fire safety inspections in Scotland in the wake of the Grenfell Tower tragedy. A Holyrood report has praised the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for carrying out more than 900 inspections following the fire at the London Tower block in June. It also calls for more support for home buyers who discover building defects. The Scottish Government is claiming Westminster welfare reforms could result in around 30,000 disabled people in Scotland being worse off. However, the UK Government says that figure is misleading. Well, our health and social care correspondent Shelley Joffrey joins me. So, Shelley, firstly, tell me more about the claims.
Well, all working age adults who get disability allowance at the moment are being transferred to a new benefit, the Personal Independence Payment, or PIP as it's known. And this was a change made by the Westminster Government. So what the Scottish Government's done is look at the impact of these changes here, and it found 45% of those being reassessed for PIP will get more money from the change, but 44% will have their payment cut or removed altogether, at least initially, before any appeals take place. The report also says many disabled people claiming employment and support allowance are £29 a week worse off since April. Again, a change that was made by the UK Government.
And what is the UK Government saying about the claims?
Well, the Department for Work and Pensions has told us they don't recognise the figure of 30,000 disabled Scots being worse off under the changes. They say around 1 in 4 claimants now receives the highest rate of support under PIP compared to around 1 in 7 under the old disability living allowance. Scottish Labour has aimed its criticism not at the Conservatives in Westminster but at the SNP, saying all of this could have been avoided had the Scottish Government not decided to delay the devolution of disability benefits until 2020. The Scottish Conservatives, meanwhile, had no comment. These cuts are attracting widespread criticism as they start to bite. They obviously don't want to be seen to support them north of the border, but equally they don't really want to be seen to be publicly criticising them.
Shelley, thank you very much for that. There are calls for the Scottish Government to take over the running of NHS Highland following a weekend of protests over the downgrading of services in Caithness and Skye. Hundreds of people took to the streets of Wick and Thurso, where hospital services are being reviewed. Jackie O'Brien reports.
The people of the far north are on the warpath and they're calling for a halt to further cuts in their local health service. Still reeling from the downgrading of the area's only maternity unit in Wick, it's now feared that hospital bed numbers could be reduced, forcing more patients to travel over 100 miles south for treatment at Raigmore Hospital in Inverness.
Over 11,000 people went down to Raigmore last year for appointments. That needs to stop. We need to keep more people in the community. We need to make sure that more people are allowed to have the palliative care here that they need and deserve, and we need to make sure that the staff are supported.
Hundreds braved the elements to protest over NHS Highland's decision to review bed numbers at Wick's Town and County and Caithness General Hospitals and at the Dunbar Hospital in Thurso. Staff shortages are being blamed, but campaigners say further centralisation of services can't be the solution.
We want to look at cradle-to-grave care that's local in our community and that's high quality, that's dignified, rather than starting with the argument about budget and sustainability and trying to cobble together some kind of healthcare service that really isn't fit for purpose.
Some have called on the Scottish Government to take over the running of NHS Highland, claiming the public no longer had confidence in the way rural health services are being run.
I think the Scottish Government have the ability to find the money to actually address the problem here, because there is a problem. All these mums travelling all these distances is going to end in tragedy, and it'll take money to put it right, and let's go to the people of the purse. That's the Scottish Government.
NHS Highland, which also faced protests over health services on Skye at the weekend, denies there's a need for any governmental intervention, but it agrees that a new approach is required.
We are facing up to that need for change now. That change will be difficult because it will mean doing things in a different way. But I think that we can together create ways of working that will be sustainable into the future.
A public consultation into health services in Caithness begins next month. The Health Authority says it's committed to providing them as safe and as locally as possible. Jackie O'Brien reporting Scotland, Inverness.
The Edinburgh Garden of Remembrance to remember those fallen in conflict has officially opened. Lord Provost Frank Ross led the wreath laying at the Scott Monument in Princes Street Gardens. Members of the armed forces, including veterans, attended the event, which is organised by the Royal British Legion Scotland. A growth in demand for single malt Scotch whisky boosted the value of exports in the first half of this year. However, the number of bottles exported between January and June was down. Value rose by 3.4% to just under £1.8 billion. But volume of whisky sold fell by more than 2%. It continues a trend towards consumers choosing premium brands of Scotch whisky, with cheaper blends losing sales. A dolphin in distress has died in Buckie despite a rescue effort. The white-beaked dolphin was spotted swimming on its side, which can be a sign of illness, in circles in the town harbour. Volunteers from British Divers Marine Life Rescue have special permission to approach dolphins, or trying to herd it nearer to where a vet could examine it at the harbour side. It later moved location and became stranded on shore. Now it's almost 6:45. A reminder of tonight's top story. Nicola Sturgeon is calling for a cross-party meeting to review how the Scottish Parliament deals with sexual harassment allegations. And still to come, we hear from Sir Jackie Stewart about the man who surpassed his Formula One record. Football now, and the man in charge of Scotland's future strategy hasn't ruled out taking over as manager of the national team. Malky Mackay was given the job on a temporary basis for next week's friendly against the Netherlands. Might he take the job on permanently? Alistair Lamont has been asking the question.
Stuart Regan and the rest of the Scottish FA board have a massive decision on their hands. Who should be the next national manager? Malky Mackay, the SFA's performance director, was tasked with the role temporarily.
The next competitive Scotland game is a year down the line. In that regard, there's no desperate rush to appoint a permanent successor to Gordon Strachan. But would Malky Mackay ultimately be interested in being that man?
I'm in charge of 7 teams at the moment, and I was in 8 different countries last month. So I've got an awful lot on my plate right now. This is an immense honour, and right now I'm looking forward to actually this next couple of weeks and being focused on that as far as it's concerned. Not after that, we'll wait and see where that goes.
So you're not ruling yourself out of the running for the permanent job?
No, listen, every manager that is Scottish and is would be proud to be the manager of the national team. And right now I am that person. You know, the timing is a big thing, and I'm 10 months into a job that I'm incredibly proud to be doing, and a job that's fundamentally, I think, is very, very important going forward in Scottish football.
Honing the country's elite development programme and bringing in a new head coach for the national women's team are just 2 of the issues recently occupying Mackay's time. There's nothing to suggest he is lobbying for the job, but indiscretions from his time at Cardiff would undoubtedly be raised were he to come into contention. Nonetheless, show racism the red card today stood by their view of his original SFA appointment, saying Malky has acknowledged and apologised for his actions in sending racist, homophobic and sexist text messages. He also underwent equality and diversity training and did voluntary work with Kick It Out. His first meaningful work as interim Scotland manager was to call up 8 uncapped players, including Ryan Christie and Graham Shinnie. A similar impact back at Pittodrie against the Dutch, and who knows what the future will bring. Alistair Lamont reporting Scotland.
Well, meanwhile, the Scotland and Celtic fullback Kieran Tierney has tonight signed a new long-term deal with the Parkhead club. The improved 6-year contract comes on the eve of a big Champions League match with German giants Bayern Munich, with home manager Brendan Rodgers feeling his side is due a big result in the competition soon. Keridin Itzan has more.
He's the goal-scoring fullback who can do no wrong at the moment.
What a finish from Kieran Tierney!
A star for club and country, Kieran Tierney has now placed his future to Celtic until the summer of 2023, meaning other clubs will have to pay a fortune to prize him away. His next challenge is this lot, one of the biggest names in European football. A few years ago, Bayern Munich were in back-to-back Champions League finals. But if Celtic are looking for reasons to be cheerful, Bayern come calling tomorrow without 2 of their top stars. Striker Robert Lewandowski got injured at the weekend, while French star Franck Ribéry is a longer-term casualty. And the last time Celtic hosted the German giants, in 2003, Martin O'Neill's men got a 0-0 draw.
They've shown the consistency domestically
they've shown that they are grown at this level, having been out in it for a few years, and we have a lot of young players that are gaining invaluable experience from it. So it takes time, but we hope that somewhere very soon we can make a big result.
There are, however, reasons to be fearful too. A fortnight ago, Bayern cruised to a 3-0 win over Brendan Rodgers' side. Another win at the weekend put them top of the German Bundesliga. And World Cup finalist and Champions League winner Arjen Robben is just one of a list of stars Bayern still have at their disposal.
Let's be honest, we've got nothing to lose, we've got everything to show, you know. We're playing against one of the biggest teams in Europe. It's a big opportunity for us to go there and just show what we can do against them.
There's no doubt Celtic will need to bring their A-game just to keep pace with Bayern Munich. But at Aberdeen recently, Brendan Rodgers' side produced their best display of the season. More of the same will be required tomorrow night, as the Germans know a win will almost certainly qualify them for the last 16 of the Champions League and also knock Celtic out. Kerry Nidsan reporting Scotland at Celtic Park.
Well, here's someone who knows all about being a champion. Lewis Hamilton's 4th World Championship makes him the most decorated British Formula One driver. He surpasses Sir Jackie Stewart, who won 3 titles in the 60s and 70s. Well, we've been speaking to Sir Jackie about Lewis Hamilton's achievement and how he thinks the sport has changed. Gillian Sharp reports.
A landmark for Lewis Hamilton in Mexico and a title which takes him into the history books.
Stewart took the checkered flag at an average speed of 86.82 miles an hour.
Driving in a very different era, Scotland's Sir Jackie Stewart chalked up 3 world championships, a record for a British driver that's endured until now.
I've held it for 43 years, 44 years actually, I think, and records are meant to be broken. That's the Jura range.
Speaking from his home near Geneva, Sir Jackie has been reflecting on old times and new. He retired from racing in his 30s and says that Lewis Hamilton could have plenty of time ahead.
Physically we're still good at these 30s, and sometimes even stronger because you're mentally stronger and sometimes physically stronger too. So I think timing is important. In my particular case, I burned out.
Racing in the 60s and 70s was very different to now, and part of Sir Jackie's legacy to the sport he loves is as a safety advocate. It can still be dangerous, he says, but not like it was.
The current generation of racing drivers don't really understand what real fatality, serial fatality, feels like. The funerals, the fathers, the mothers, the brothers, the sisters, the wives, the children, being destroyed right in front of you. We all went through that era. Thank God it's over.
Sir Jackie now dedicates himself to a very personal challenge, seen here last year with his wife Lady Helen looking at scrapbooks of their life together. After she was diagnosed with dementia, he founded a charity to help fund research.
I am absolutely sure there will be a cure for dementia and for Alzheimer's. Dementia is what Helen has. It's a terrible disease. It's incurable at the present time. That has to change. I want to make that change.
Gillian Sharp, reporting Scotland.
A huge Pacific bluefin tuna has been rescued by salmon farmers in Colonsay after it appeared in one of their cages. The 3-metre-long fish, weighing more than 47 stone, was apparently being chased by dolphins and porpoises when it burst through the pen. Surely nice little dolphins don't do that. Christopher, what's happening on the weather?
Let's take a look, Jackie. Thank you very much indeed. Hello there. Well, it was a cold one last night, wasn't it? We got down to -5 at Tulloch Bridge, but even the bigger towns and cities got down to freezing or just under. And then today, the clouds streamed in, trapping all that cold air, resulting in a grey, cold day. In fact, let's take a look at the temperatures that we just about struggled up to, just 5 Celsius there in Aboyne. But just as you've looked out your woolly hat, tomorrow the temperature's straight back up again, 15 degrees in Aboyne. So quite a difference on the cards tomorrow, and the change starts tonight with clouds thickening, and there'll be some outbreaks of rain to go with it too. At the moment it's quite chilly for eastern Scotland with clear skies, but the cloud builds overnight with outbreaks of rain and quite murky too, with those breezes from the southwest starting to strengthen as well. So certainly a frost-free night by the end of the night, with temperatures up to 9-10 Celsius across a good part of the mainland. And it's a mild start to the day tomorrow morning. You certainly won't need the scraper tomorrow morning, but it will be a cloudy start with outbreaks of rain. That rain across the West Highlands likely to fall throughout the day tomorrow and indeed Wednesday, so a wet 48 hours here. By mid-afternoon, say around 3 o'clock, it's grey, it's cloudy, it's a little bit damp, but it is mild. 12, 13, 14 Celsius, and the winds coming from the southwest quite breezy. Now, there will be some breaks in the cloud over towards parts of Aberdeenshire and the Murray coast where we could well reach 15 or 16 degrees, but the rain further west still in place, still falling, quite murky around the northwest coast, and the winds by this point through the Minches will be strong. Now, the rest of the afternoon into the evening and overnight, that rain's still with us, still cloudy, and again reasonably mild, but it will be quite breezy. Now, looking ahead towards Wednesday, and we can see that we do have this weather front across central parts of Scotland, bringing the cloud and further outbreaks of rain. Further north, you see the isobars coming straight down, and that means northern parts of the country, just an element of something a wee bit cooler. But central southern Scotland, still fairly mild, still fairly cloudy, still fairly damp. That rain edging south through the central belt. Temperatures there, 12, 13 Celsius, and really quite windy across the far north and the Northern Isles. Thursday, the cloud and the rain goes, the sun comes out, but it will be just a little bit cooler with temperatures around 9 to 11 Celsius, but the winds generally light, so it shouldn't feel too cold. A fair amount going on. That's the forecast. Jackie.
Thank you very much for that, Christopher. And a reminder of tonight's main news. The SNP has confirmed that 2 different individuals have reported inappropriate conduct. That news just breaking. We'll bring you more on that tonight. It comes as Nicola Sturgeon has called for a cross-party meeting to review how the Scottish Parliament deals with allegations. From us, good evening.